Masechta Avoda Zara Daf Nun Amud Aleph. We're starting from Mem Tes Amud Beis, the new Perek Rabbi Yishmael. We just finished off Perek Kol Hatzlamim. Zog the Mishnah, Rabbi Yishmael Leimer Sholosh Avonim Zu B'tzad Makolis. A Makolis is that it was made up of two stones, one a little bit distant from the other, with a stone on the top of it is lying on the two stones. So Rabbi Yishmael says if there were three stones standing all upwards, which was on the side of the makolis, and the makolis, they already served it by throwing stones at it, that was the derech of serving the makolis, asuris. Are forbidden to have anosh, shtayim, but if there was only two stones standing up next to the makolis, mutaris, it's mutar, according to Rabbi Yishmael. The Chachamim say, if these stones look like they were right next to the makol, if it was next to the makolis, then it seems like those stones fell from the makolis, it's asuris. Then those two stones are asur. But if it doesn't look so close, or it doesn't look like it fell from the makolis, then mutaris, and it's going to be mutar even if it's three stones. But if it looks like it fell from the makolis, it would be even asur by two stones. So it's understood the reason of the Rabbanan, why they were mechalik between the stones that were close to the makulis and the stones that were not, because the kasavri, because the chacham hold that they were even avnei, that they were served even the broken stones. And therefore, if it looks like it fell, fell from it, that you could be, it was close to it, that we could say that it fell from the makulis, then asuris. Then we say it's asur because it has a din like Avoda Zara. All the stones that were thrown on the makolis became part of the Avoda Zara. But if it's Avoda that it didn't fall from it was so far away, so then it's mutar. So that makes sense according to Rabbanan how to be mechalik if it was close or not. If it was close, you could assume that it fell from the makolis. But if not, which it didn't fall from the makolis, then it will be mutar. Rabbi Yishmael, who was machalik between two and three stones, my kasava. What does the Rabbi Yishmael hold? If they serve broken stones, even two stones should become asur if they serve shvadim. So why does he say only if it's three stones? And if he holds they don't serve broken stones, then even three stones should not be asur. So it's talking about a case that it's known that the stones had fallen from the makolis. In such a case, everybody holds it's asur. Even according to the one who says we don't serve broken pieces. It's talking about Avid Zichadim, which is not the derech to throw stones and to serve the broken stones. The makulis itself was made of broken stones. But over here, by the makulis, it's lechatchila considered serving broken stones because they're loose. They're not glued, cemented to each other. That's the derech of serving the stones. Keep pligi. When was Rabbi Yishmael and the Chachamim arguing? By stam avonim, which is not known if it fell from the makulis or not. So sagt the Gemara that even by stam stones, we're going to say not in each by stam stones. He says, and that's. And even by stam avonim, not in each case are they arguing. Only when the stones were very close to the makolis, like with an amma or half an amma, there also they didn't argue because the ikilam and they nafal. There we can say for sure it fell from it. But then everybody will hold it also even if it's two. Keep pligi. Where they arguing? It's ba'avonim hamar chakis. That was more than an amma. Even if it was within Daled Amis, which for sure it didn't fall from it. So before we conclude the Bia of the Machlekes, the Gemara asked, how are you going to learn the chilik in Avonim that were the chaykes? Well, how could you say that it was distance? Well, b'tzad Makolis Katani, we learned b'feidish that it was on the side of Makolis. My b'tzad. So after the Gemara, so if it's b'tzad Makolis, you can't say it was distant within 4 amas, more than an am away. Says the Gemara, so how could you say b'tzad? After the Gemara, my b'tzad abba amas today. Why is it called b'tzad? B'tzad on the side of Makolis, because it's still considered as close. Because Dalad Amis is Mekayim Shaladim, and therefore you can still call it, since it's within the Dalad Amis of the Makulis, it's called Mitzad. Rabbi Shmuel holds Eis Makulis Cotton, Tzad Makulis Cotton, that they made like a sub Makulis, a small Makulis next to the big Makulis. So Shalish, if it had 3 stones according to Rabbi Shmuel, the Damian, then it's similar to the regular Makulis. So which had 3 stones, 2 on the side and 1 on top of them. So asuris, it's asur. Shtayim, which is not similar, it's only 2 stones, which the makulis is made out of 3. Mutaris is mutar. Rabbanon sabri einois makulis got mitzat makulis got. They did not. It wasn't a derech to have a small makulis next to the big makulis. The Rabbanon argued with Rabbi Shmuel, and they said they didn't make a small makulis. And therefore, according to Rabbanan, it made no difference if it was 3 or 2. The chilik will be nidisimai if it looked very close and you could be tailor that it fell from the makolis asuris. It's going to be also like all broken pieces that they serve, and it's going to be also sheni simai. But if it doesn't look like it fell from the makolis, it was more distant away. Mutaris, then it's for sure it didn't fall from Makalis, and it's mutar. In fact, the Gemara on the way Rabbi Yechon learned the Machlokes. Amar, we learned the Tana had said the Yodua Shanashmi Ben Akil Asuris. It's talking about it's a sure thing that we know that it fell off. According to everybody, it's aser, even if it's 2. But I mean, in fact, the Gemara Astira, it says Avonim. It says stones that it's known that it fell off the makeles. We learned the chilik nirisimay asuris. According to Chachamim, if it seemed like it fell from the makeles, it's aser. It's considered avoda zara. V'shein nirisimay mutaris. But if it doesn't look like it fell from the avoda zara and from the makeles, it's not considered as the avoda zara, and you're not. And Shvarim itself is not, they wouldn't serve as Avodah Zarah. And therefore, it's mutar. Rabbi Shmuel Shalosh Asuris. That even if it doesn't look like it fell from the Avodah Zarah, but if it was 3, it's Asur, Shnai Mutaris. 2 are going to be mutar, even if it looks like it fell from the Avodah Zarah. Because it's not Makulis. And so, according to Chachamim, if it's not Nidas Imai, it doesn't look like it fell from the Makulis, it's mutar. And even according to Rabbi Shmuel, it says 2 are mutar, and only 3 are aser, even if it's known that it fell from the Makulis. So you have a stira. Before we said L'Divyakal, if it's Yadua Shenash Mimanu, that it's Asurais. And here it says, if it's not Nirais, or according to the Chachamim, that it fell from the Makulis, then it's mutar. Or according to Rabbi Yishmael, if it's 2, it's going to be mutar. Why? It should be aser. The Kuliyam, we said, is aser. Amarav late time, don't learn Avonim Shanashu, that we know for sure that it fell from the Makulis. Ala'ema Shanimtzu, that he found it next to the Makulis. And there's a machlokes between Rabbi Yishmael and Chachamim. Rabbi Yishmael says that if it's found next to the makulis, then it's not. If it's, the Rabbanon say if it's nidus, if it seems like it fell from the makulis, it's us. But if it's not nidus, it's mutar. And according to Rabbi Yishmael also, If it's two, it's not going to be. It's going to be muta because it's only nirois. But if it's three and it's nearest, then it's going to be usher. So it's not a stira because we're talking about shenimtzu. He found it. It's not a short thing. And the price that said everybody agrees it's usher. It's talking about we know for sure it's 12 in the makulis. And the place where we learned the machlekes is that we don't know for sure. We found it and we're not sure. Like what if someone Rabbi Yishmael Shnai Mutaris? Does Rabbi Yishmael hold that two are going to be mutva? Tani we learned in Rabbi Yishmael Lema Shnayim two stones kitfisaloi. If it's within 4 amas, asuris is also shalish. Afilu meruchakes. But if it's 3 stones, even if it's more than a half ama asuris is going to be asur, because 3 stones is a sub of the makulis. Amarava. So you have a stira. We learned in Abraisa Shtayim Tfisaloi is asur. So he learns by Shtayim it's going to be asur if it's close to the makulis. And we learned according to Rabbi Yochanan that it's not. It's if it's Shtayim, it's going to be muta. Amarava like kasha. Kam betfisa achas. If betfisa achas means that there's no hefsek between the stones and the makulis, so therefore it's considered as part of the Avoda zara, and it's also even if it's 2. Kam b'shteis tfises. But here, where we said that it's going to be mutter because there is a hefsek between the stones and the makulis. Ve'hechi dami. But you matter what's the pshat? You're going to ikakuva beinu uveini. That when we said there's shtei tfises means that there's a hefsek between the makulis and the makulis. There's a hefsek between the makulis and the stones. That 3 stones that are put in an upward position, is that considered as a makulis that you're going to ask? We learned from Abraisa. This is the stones, how the setup of makulis is. One on one side, one on the other, and one goes on top of both stones. And here, but not 3 stones in an upward fashion. When do we learn that the position of makulis is that it's one on one side, one on the other, and one on top? By the ika makulis. But the sub makulis could be even 3 in an upstanding position. The house of Yan Melech was destroyed. And the goyim came and put up a makulis, and then afterwards, other goyim came, the loipolchi who do not serve the makulis. Shaklina, they took apart this makulis v'chipu b'hemes adrachim, and they paved the paths usratois and the highways that went from city to city. Ika, the rabbanon, the rabbanon who stayed away from walking on those paths. Ika, the rabbanon, the loy pasha. There were other rabbanon that wouldn't walk on those paths. The loy pasha that would walk on the paths or on the highways. Rabbi Yochanan said to the Chachamim who didn't go on these paths, if the non-Kedoshim walked on these paths, should we not walk on them? Who were these Banan of the holies, the sons of the holies? Why were they called the sons of the holies? They wouldn't even look on the form that faced of what that was on the coin, because sometimes they had a symbol of Avoda zara. My time in the man, the parish. What's the reason of the one that didn't want to walk on these pavements? He held like Rav Gidl, the name of Rav Yosef, the name of Rav Menayim. From where do we learn out? How do we know that the offerings for for idols you can never be mavatal? Like it says in the pasuk, some of the Balpei, they attach themselves to the Balpei, which is a getchke that they defecated to. And they brought the carbon for the mason. Carbon for the mason is they brought offerings for the idols which are not live. Ma mace ain't like and we compare it to a mace, just like the tumas mace that you cannot ever be mavatal, meaning the mace itself is also ba'anolo elam, and you cannot be mavatal the isa of the mace itself. After so too, the offerings of idols you can never be mavatal it. So therefore, if they made it into pavements, it doesn't become bottle from Avoda zara. And the one that walked on it, why were they allowed to walk in it? It's takrevis Avoda zara. Says the Gemara, because Be'ina came upon him. The only together of takrevis is if there were such offerings that they offered in the Beis Hamikdash for the Mizbeach, such offerings, if they did it for the Avoda zara, that's the type of offerings that they asked. But here, stones is not Veleka. Here, by Avonim, that's not the type. They never offered Avonim by the Mizbeach. And therefore, it's not part of takrevis, it's only part of Avoda zara, which a guy could be Mavatal. Abayim came to a certain place. Also, and he came into the base Medrash, and he brought the following brisa with him to explain this din in this din that we're talking about. That brought idol server that brought us stones from the Makreles, the Chipmem, Drachim, Usrat, and he paved the highway with it. So the Gemara wants to know, Mutaris, the Braisa says it's mutter because the guy was Mavatal, the Shema Kailas, by making it into pavers for the highway. And it says, but Yisol Shevi Avan Ben Amakailas v'chip v'hem drachim masat ha'yis. But a Yid that brought these stones from the Makailas and made it into paths or pavers for the highways or for the paths, I ain't understood this because only a guy can be Mavatal Avoda zara, not a Yid. And Rabbi Yirmiyah answer, I said on this brisa, v'leis naga v'loi bar naga. There's no chacham or ben chacham. I mean, a carpenter is referring to a chacham, and the ben of a carpenter is a ben chacham. The Yafar that shouldn't be able to that should be able to answer it. So the Gemara wants to explain what kasha was he talking about. Amar Rav Sheshes ana loy nagana v'loi bar nagana. I'm not a chacham, meaning the carpenter means a chacham, and I'm not a ben chacham. Nevertheless, but it can lay. I'll answer the story of these brisa. My question, what was the story of the brisa? The Gidol of what we brought before that the takrevis Avoda zara, that you can never be mavatal it, and then in the brisa it says that Anachi could be mavatal the stones of the makulis. So we can answer. So he says you can answer. There's a difference because in order to ask a davar because of takrevis Avoda zara being came panim, you need that it should be similar to the offerings that were served in the Beis Hamikdash, the Leika, and these stones were not similar to the offerings of the Beis Hamikdash. So it's not in the gather of takrevis. Rather, it has a din like any other Avoda zara, and therefore the bitul does help. Yirmiyah came to a certain place. He came into Beis Medrash, and he brought the following brisa with him. It says, one cannot smoke out the worms from a tree or prune the tree. I'm sorry, mezamim means to cover the cuts after pruning, let's say the holes in the tree from cutting the branches, so they would fill it up with manure. So it says that you cannot do neither al chalamed. Kan both by shvius and al chalamed ein megazmin. You cannot prune. But besachn shemen lila magazim. But you could smear oil on the pruned tree that was already pruned from before shvius. Whether it's chalamed side or whether it's shvius. And he says, I'm not a chacham or ben talmid chacham to be able to answer it. Or there's no chacham or ben talmid chacham to be able to answer it. Ravina said, I'm not a carpenter or the son of a carpenter, meaning I'm not a chacham nor the son of a chacham. But I can answer it. What are you answering? What was the kasha to Rabbi Yimya? He says, if you're going to say Mayit Shvi'is kasha, he's asking from Chalamayit on Shvi'is, that meaning, my Shna, B'Shvi'is the Shari, what's the difference that by Shvi'is, that you're allowed to smoke out the worms, and to tie, and you can smoke out the worms and put manure on the wounds of the tree. Why by Mayid and Chalamayid you're not allowed? Are these two in Yarim similar to one another? By Shvi is Malacha Marachmana. By Shvi is the Torah asked only to do Malacha on the ground, Malacha in the fields. But to be matriach with something that's not a Malacha, you're allowed. But by Mayid, I feel Tircha Nami Aser. But by Mayid, even Tircha was Aser. And therefore, these smoking out the worms, or putting oil, manure on the wounds of the tree, is a Tircha, and that's why it was Aser. But B'Shvi it's not a Malacha, B'Shvi is Mutter. Because Shvi there's no Is on the Tircha, only on the Malacha. Well, says the Gemara, Ravina says he has a contradiction from putting manure on the wound to pruning the shari. Why is putting manure on the wound mutter? Why pruning is aser? Says could you compare? Zium is putting the manure on the wounds of the tree, is just keeping the tree from dying. The shari, that's mutter to do even b'shvius. Akizum avri ilana. Akizum, pruning a tree, you're being meshabeich the tree. You're making it that it should grow better. That's also shvius. Says only the kasha zim azim kakashale. Because in one brayse they can masliin umazam b'shvius. One brayse said you can smoke out the worms, and umazamin it says but you're allowed to put manure on the wounds. Ramina, I'll ask you on the year of shvius. Ramina, it says mazamis had his son. You could be mezamin the plantings, and you could tie the branch to the tree that it should grow in an upward fashion. You could cut off the tips in order to be mashmir that should grow better. Islam button, and you can make these houses to put and fill up the walls with afar to protect the plants from the sun. Mashkin say, and you can water it out Rosh Hashanah of the year of Shvius. And in the Mishnah is Medayik, Shad Rosh Hashanah in. Only to Rosh Hashanah you're allowed to do it. After Shvius, like. But in Shvius you're not allowed to do it, even Ziyum. And before we just said Ziyum is mut in the year of Shvius. So it says, Dilma, maybe we can answer the Mishnah. The Rav Uk Barachama, like Rav Uk, the Chfira Tachsa Ilan on Chalamayid of Rav Uk Barachama, Dam Rav Uk Barachama, take Kishkushi Hava. There were two types of diggings under the olive tree. One was to be mashbir the tree that it should grow better. That you're not allowed to do in the year of trees. One was to just to protect, cover the roots with sand to protect it that the tree shouldn't dry up or die. That's mutter. Nami here too. There were two types of putting sand on the wound of a tree. Like one is to close the makkah in the tree to prevent it from dying. That's mutter in the year of Shvius. And one was to be mashbir the tree that it should grow better and it should grow more. That's forbidden to do on Shvius or on Chalamayid. On Shvius. So the Gemara, the shmearing the oil and the shmearing the oil is akasha. The Ketani in the Brais will then sachin shemen lakos by Shvius that you can smear oil on the prune stuff. Well, it's Chalamayid Shvius. What I mean, in fact, it says sachin es apagin You could oil the figs, the small little figs, unripe figs, right at the beginning of their growth while it's blossoming from the tree, in order that it should be fat. And you could purse them and fill up the holes with oil in order to fatten the figs, that it should be fat and good figs. So it's mashma dafka ad Rosh Hashanah in B'Shvius light, but in Shvius not. So you see, Sachan is not also B'Shvius. And we said before, Sachan is but B'Shvius. Midami. He says, how could you compare? Hacha in the Braisa, where he's smearing the prune tree in the place of the cut, or Komi Elana, that's just to prevent the tree from dying. V'shari, that's mutter. Pitume Hasam, but over there where we said it's aser, it's talking about Pitume Peda, that he smeared with oil the Peda in order to enhance the Peda, that it should be a beta Peda. Aser, that's aser. Amle have some relate to Avashi Rabina. Rab Bar Yirmiyah, the din is Mesich the Mayed, smearing oil on a tree that was pruned in the place of the cut is mutar and chalamayit. Aziyum the mayed, but on the din of ziyum, meaning the makin, the ilan, to heal it is also to do on chalamayit. Kakasha leis, akasha, mechdi, hayukumi, hayukumi. Both cases are to prevent it from dying. Maishna haida, shari maishna haida. So what's the difference? In one brayse you say ziyum is mutar, and one says ziyum is also. So you might have the comment. This is what Rabbi Yirmiyah was referring. There's no chacham or ben talmud chacham that can answer this theta, because both cases are of zihum. In these two prices, we're talking about to prevent it from the tree from dying, and one said it's us, one says it's mutter. What's not the reason of one price is saying it's us and one price is saying mutter?